Hi and welcome back. In this video, I wanted to tell you about claims. Claims in Flask JWT Extended are just pieces of data we can choose to attach to the JWT payload. They are separate from the identity, because the identity is used to identify a user. Claims are used to add some extra data that will allow us to do something when the JWT comes back to us. So we're going to look at a flow of claims so that it becomes a bit clearer. I'm going to open app.py here, and then under the JWT manager, we're going to add some configuration. So we're going to say at jwt.userClaimsLoader, okay? And then we're going to add a new function. It doesn't matter what you call the function, as long as it is under this decorator here, and it takes in one parameter that must be called identity. This decorator here is going to modify the function below it, add claims to JWT, and it's going to link it up with our JWT manager. The JWT manager in turn is linked up with our app. So what's going to happen is whenever we create a new access token, a new JWT, we're going to run this function to see if we should add any extra data to that JWT as well. Here's how it goes. Identity, of course, is, if we go back to our user login resource, identity is whatever we pass to the create access token function. So if we're passing the user's ID to create access token, the identity parameter here is going to have the value of the user ID that we want to add claims to. So we're going to say a simple if statement, if identity is equal to 1, we're going to return isAdmin is true. Otherwise, we're going to return isAdmin is false. Okay, just a simple claim here. If the user is the first user to be created in the database, we're going to say they are an admin. If they're not, then we're going to say they're not an admin. Okay, now of course, I'm going to add a comment just for completeness here. Instead of hard coding this, you should read from a config file or a database. Okay. Now, that I hope is fairly reasonable to you, but instead of hard coding that your first user must be your admin, you should be reading this from some sort of database of your admin users that you can, of course, also create using your REST API and so forth. Okay, now we've got this claim, we need to use the claim. So we're going to go over to the user resource, and the item resource, not the user resource. We're going to go to the item resource, and in the delete function here, we're going to use the claims. So all we have to do is, well, of course, first thing, make the JWT required. So we're going to say JWT required. Now that the JWT is required in this endpoint, whenever we run the endpoint, one of two things will happen. One, the user won't have sent a JWT. If they don't send a JWT, Flask JWT Extended is going to return an error, and it's going to say unauthorized. The only other option is when they send a valid JWT, that means that by the time we're on this line, we have a JWT that is valid and that tells us that the person who sent us the request is a user, a valid logged in user. Okay, now we know we have a user here. All we have to do is say something like claims is get JWT claims. Once again, this is going to link up to our Flask app, and it's going to get the data from the request that is coming in. It's going to interpret the JWT that's come in through the request, and is going to extract any claims that have been attached to that JWT. Then we can say if not claims is admin, then we're going to return a message saying, hey, you need to be an admin. Okay. That's it. That's all we have to do to add claims to a JWT. Okay, let's delete data.db. I'm going to delete that just to go back to user number 1. And then we are going to run app.py. We can go over to Postman, And we can go ahead and close these things, and we're going to register a new user. And this user is going to be user number 1. We can double check that by going to our new get endpoint and getting user 1. You can see the username is user 3. That's the user we just created. So we should now be able to both get an item. No, not enough segments. Of course, we didn't log in. We created a user but didn't log in. So there you have it. Now we have an access token that's stored here in the environment. We can go ahead and get an item. Item not found, so we're going to create it. It's been created. We can go back and get it. It's there. Now we can delete the item. This should just work. It doesn't work because we're missing an authorization header. So we're going to go into the header section, and we're going to add it here, authorization. And this is going to be better. And it's going to be, is it access token? Yes, access token. There we go. So this is now getting us into our function. But of course, we forgot to import something. Or rather, I forgot to import something. So don't be like me. Don't forget to import your functions. So from Flask JWT extended, make sure to import JWT required and get JWT claims. Okay, that's restarted our app. And look at what happens when we send this now again. Item deleted. So this worked, but it doesn't really tell us whether our claims did anything. Why? Because we need to test it with a user that is not an admin as well. So we're going to do that. We're going to test with user 2. We're going to create a new user called user 2. We're going to log in as user 2. It's going to give us a new access token, which is saved into our environment. And then we are going to create a new item. This is fine. We can do that. And then we're going to try to delete it. We should not be able to do this. And there you have it. Admin privilege required. It doesn't let us because when we created the JWT, we did not add the claim to say we're an admin. So going back to our app.py, we're just going to close this terminal here. We ran this function, but the identity, the user ID was 2 at this point, not 1, because this is the second user we created, and our ID is an auto-incrementing ID. So what we returned is admin false. In the delete, we then checked whether claims is admin evaluated to true. Well, if it didn't evaluate to true, we returned a message, and so we did. The rest of this code then doesn't run, because as soon as we return in Python, of course, we exit the function, so this doesn't run here. That's how you add claims to a JWT, and claims can be really useful for stuff like this and also for a number of other things. I'm sure you can come up with some examples on using claims in your own projects. And I just wanted to tell you about it because it's straightforward using Flask JWT extended, and it can add a lot of functionality to your APIs. That's it for this video. I'll see you on the next one.